Pronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1696 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Yes, we are open. An award-winning podcast from Monaris, hosted by FOTM Al Grego. Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. Get out to Christie Pitts this summer and take in some amazing baseball action. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Building Toronto's Skyline, a podcast and book from Nick Iones, sponsored by Fusion Corp Construction Management, Inc. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Joining me today, making her Toronto Mic debut, is Supriya Dwivedi. Welcome, Supriya.
Hi.
Nice to see you again, because we actually have met before. Do you remember our first encounter?
Our very first encounter,
Our one and only.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a few weeks ago, was it not?
A few weeks ago. Okay, so I was biking to the Sound Garage on Geary because I was going to see Change of Heart. Shout out to Ian Blurton. And I saw, like, in the corner of my eyes, I'm going up the street, I see Bruce Arthur. Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I see Bruce, and I'm like, so I pull over to chat up Bruce, who I haven't seen in a while, but he's been down here. And then I see this woman, and I'm like, I knew who you were right away, but we have never actually met. And I'm like, oh, there's Supriya Dwivedi. And we did a quick exchange, and then who else was there? Dave Bedini was there. That was the West End Phoenix HQ. And next thing you know, what, you're in the basement.
Yeah, that's exactly my memory as well. Basically, both Bruce and Dave told me I'd be moronic not to do this.
I've invited you in the past.
Yeah.
Do you have any memory of this?
I do, vaguely. It would have been when I was still either on AM 640 or I had just left.
But you gave me what I call the polite decline. Like, it was a respectful, polite, no thank you.
I mean, that sounds like me. I'm generally polite. I was raised well. So if I'm being approached with politeness, I will.
Okay. But so is it just you weren't in the mood for this, and then you were pestered by Bedini and Arthur, and here you are.
Well, I mean, in fairness, I have also, in my view, lived a whole other lifetime since you probably would have last reached out to me. So I feel like there's just more to talk about.
All right, we're going to crack open our Great Lakes beer because we're going to get into all of it. But on the mic, Supriya, 3, 2. Oh my goodness. Okay, cheers to you.
Cheers.
So you're drinking the lager, the premium lager. How is it? How was that first sip?
It's very good. Goes down smooth.
Okay.
I'm like a non-beer drinker. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's me.
Yeah, I don't like a real hoppy kind of beer, so this is very smooth, very light.
The lager.
Yeah.
Now, I am drinking an IPA, but it's the summer, it's called the Sunnyside Session IPA, and I drink it all summer because it goes down smooth, it's delicious, and I can pop a couple of these and I won't be like slurring my speech. So shout out to Great Lakes Brewery. I'm actually recording an episode of Between Two Fermenters on their patio tomorrow afternoon. So that's not a Toronto Mic'd episode, but I'll be there tomorrow, and maybe I'll bring home some Sunnyside Session IPA. You're going to take home with you, Supriya. Maybe this is why Bruce Arthur and everybody said you should do the show. You're going to take home some fresh craft beer from Great Lakes.
Yeah, that was one of the major selling points. I'm not going to lie.
And just quick little, like, for the listenership, and then we're going to get into it. My daughter is at McGill University.
Fun.
She did take her last exam already, but she's still hanging around Montreal. Like, she loves it so much. I think I'm going to lose her to Montreal, but we'll get to that in a moment. Just for the listeners, like, I'm trying to track down the gong that is can be found. This gong was apparently performed by Gil Moore from Triumph, and it was produced by Bob Wiseman. And we found this out via Ian Blurden. Even though Ian has no memory of where the gong is, I got a lead yesterday on Instagram that the gong, it's on a song called Give It Back. So I thought it was on a different song, but we think we found the gong. So I'm just letting the listenership know there will be like a little mockumentary on the gong, and that's a pretty good lead. Supriya, I know you're interested. Where is that gong on Change of Heart Smile?
That's the only thing I've been thinking about this whole time.
That's why you're here. All right, so I loved what you wrote. It's like, this is something you wrote, but is it true? I'm sure it's true. You wrote it, but you were accepted into both medical and law school at McGill?
So I didn't apply to med school or law school at McGill. My undergrad was done at McGill, and my father is an anesthesiologist who did pre-med and then, med school residency, the whole shebang at McGill. And I don't know if you know anything, Mike, about...
Oh, just stop the sentence right there.
Yeah.
I don't know anything.
If you have any friends who are South Asian or perhaps East Asian,
okay,
there's one profession, particularly if your parents are also of that profession, and that's the only thing you can do. So all I was told my entire life was that I had to go to med school. So, I was in science in McGill for my undergrad. I wrote the MCAT. I applied to med schools, but there was something about it that just didn't really sit right with me. And so for my application for Université de Montréal, I was allowed to put a second choice for free, and it was law. And I got into law school at Université de Montréal, and I went to law school instead of going to med school.
Your accent is impeccable.
Yeah.
I know this from having bilingual children. That's a very good accent. And I think it's wild that perhaps your act of rebellion against your parents was to go to law school. Like, think about that.
Oh, yeah. I had to call my older sister who is in New York, and I was like, you have to come home because I'm going to tell Dad that I'm not going to med school. And she was like, oh, crap, I'll clear my schedule and make sure I'm home. So to make sure she was there to tell him with me. And I told him in a restaurant that was going to be busy.
Yeah.
He still openly sobbed as though I told him I was going to not go to med school to sell drugs on the corner of the street.
Well, no joke, because usually it's like... Dad, I'm not going to med school. I'm going to become a stand-up comic.
Yeah.
Or I'm gonna become a musician. And then those tears are like, oh, I'll never get her off the payroll. Like, this is the worst thing I've ever heard. But basically, it's wild to me that you going to law school instead of medical school would cause your dad to cry.
Oh yeah, it was a big thing.
So you're suggesting this is a cultural thing?
I think part of it is perhaps a Dwivedi culture, and then perhaps some of it is, just general doctors. The only thing that garners, I don't know, the kind of oomph, I think, for a certain segment of immigrant parent.
So you became a lawyer?
I went to law school. I didn't actually end up practicing. What I did was the very feminist thing. As soon as I was done law school, I moved to Toronto for a boy with no job and no prospects. We ended up married, so it's a happy ending, I guess, sort of, in that respect anyway. And then I started doing radio here. I started doing 1010 stuff. I started doing more media, eventually AM 640 on the chorus side of things. And then that's what I decided I wanted to do, because in law school, I started writing political opinion pieces and started doing more and more talk radio. And that's just where I had the most fun.
So you hit my radar in November 2016. I was late to the Supriya game, okay? So this is when you take over for John Oakley on AM 640, the morning show. And currently that spot is occupied by Greg Brady, who stepped away for a little bit to run to become MP and then did not win and then is now back. And we'll get to all this AM 640 stuff in a moment. But as I'm like preparing, I'm seeing that... Of course, there's a Supriya in the public eye before you're hosting the AM 640 morning show. So, I'm going to try to, fill in some of these cracks because I'm late to the game here. But you mentioned you were on 1010. So are you just, a smart lawyer person to offer a perspective on the topic of the day?
I think I'm just a bit of a smart assy kind of person to offer
I love smart asses.
On the topic of the day. Because I had started hosting my own show on CJAD 800 in Montreal, Bell, the sister station here would have been 1010. So It was just, honestly, that's...
So how did you get that? You're just, you're well-spoken, smart person. Let's give her a show?
I think so. I think that's kind of
That's all it takes.
That's what happened. My very first opinion piece was because there was a guy that was in my criminal law class who told me nobody cared about my opinion on sexual assault as a woman because I was too emotional about it. So I took that as a challenge and I wrote an op-ed for the Montreal Gazette, which then caught the attention of the producer for the 9 to noon show. Okay. He asked if I'd come on to talk about it. As I was leaving for that one hit, I ran into the station manager and he was like, "Oh, that was really good." He's like, we do like a noon free-for-all. If we pair you up with somebody, is that something you'd be interested in? And I was like, yeah, for sure. Let's do it. So I started doing more and more stuff, and it just kind of led to my own show with Dan Delmar at the time.
Okay, cool. So, but again, you left for Toronto for a boy.
I did, yeah.
And then you're doing, you mentioned 1010, but so is it because you were already affiliated with the Montreal Bell Media station that you could slide right in and become like a contributor to 1010?
Yeah, because like John Moore used to do a lot of CJD 800 stuff as well, still back in the day, and I think that was my first foray into it.
Oh, so you had a relationship with John, and then he's like, come on our program here, the mighty More in the Morning on 1010.
Yep, that's it. And that's when I would have been working at Crestview at the time as a like GR communications consultant. And then it was when I was in my role at Crestview that I was approached by somebody at Chorus basically saying they needed to retool the entirety of their programming, but really focusing on the morning show.
Okay, and that's 2016.
That would have been early 2016.
Okay, fascinating. So on our way to 2016 here. So I want to ask you about the 2014 mayoral race. Mm-hmm. So this is the one, for those who don't remember, this is the one where Rob was running to be reelected, Rob Ford. Then he became sick, and Doug Ford took his spot. Remember the old switcheroo? Right. Then what a time in Toronto, like just to cover politics and stuff. The whole Rob Ford 2010 election win, and then heading into 2014 with the old switcheroo. Kind of wild.
Super wild. And what was so interesting is that I was new to Toronto. I was fully immersed in all of the madness that was municipal politics right off the bat, because you couldn't not be in, not just even in media and news, you couldn't be in the city without kind of getting caught up into some of the...
Okay, so what year did you come
drama.
here?
It would have been, so I officially moved in the summer of 2013, like late summer. It would have been August.
August 2013. Okay. And how do you, so to wrap up that, so you got Doug Ford, Rob Ford, the switcheroo. So Doug is running. John Tory is running. Uh-huh. He will eventually win this election. Olivia Chow is running. She's our current mayor. See how it all connects? But David Soknacki is running. How do you come to become a campaign spokesman for David?
So I had somebody approach me from the Soknacki campaign, and I had somebody approach me from a much higher profile campaign. I won't say which campaign.
Can I guess?
Yeah, I mean, you can guess all you want. But and it just, when I asked both of these people, why does your person or why does your candidate think they can run? The Soknacki answer was a literal, the person pulled out a notebook and gave me like 4 bullet points of reasons that were written down with like a bunch of sub bullets underneath. And I was like, oh man, that's a nerd. That's my guy. That's who I want. I want to help, make this. And I say that in the most loving way.
No, he's a nerd.
Yeah. Like somebody who's like a nerd about policy, who was really going to, at that time, tackle issues of transit and just like little things like, why aren't lights timed on university? Like why does that happen? Right. And little things like that I thought could materially improve conditions in the city.
And had you ever, worked with a politician before?
I had door knocked here and there, but I had never worked in the role of like a formal press secretary and then later, decom role.
Okay, so I mentioned the big three, I suppose, but how did David do in this election?
We dropped out before E-Day. Yeah, so we didn't make it past the finish line. I think it was quite clear as we were edging closer and closer to Labor Day that it just, it wasn't going to happen. There were a few things that we thought would fall into place that didn't end up falling into place. It was quite difficult also to make any noise in a media environment where, David Blaine shows up to City Hall and it kind of screws up all announcements for the rest of the week.
Yeah, like what a time to be. I feel like we're still paying for the fact that Doug Ford lost that election.
Ontario definitely is, to a degree. Yeah,
it's all very Shakespearean.
Yeah.
My goodness. Okay, so we'll along the way we'll touch on a little. We'll see what you'll say. But you went to law school, so I know you'll be careful with your replies. But in 2014, what did you learn? So what does Supriya learn? I'm talking about you like you're in the third person now. What does Supriya learn having worked with David on that campaign in 2014?
You can't always rely on earned media. Sometimes you have to make your own media. And when I say earned media, I mean like not in the traditional sense. So as a candidate who's looking to make noise or looking to break through the noise, showing up with a good plan and to make an announcement when ostensibly you'd have like the City Hall gallery there to, write their stories and file them.
Right.
It didn't make sense in that particular environment, and it certainly doesn't make sense in this fractured information environment where everything's fueled by algorithms and clicks and eyeballs. So you have to be more creative. You got to get your message directly out to voters one way or another.
Is that social media?
Yeah, I think it's social media. It's the way we interact with one another on these large platforms. It's also, quite frankly, now the way Google search works, it's quite crappy. So it's not just social media. I'd say it's a lot of these like larger big tech players.
Fascinating. So David drops out before the election, and it's the big three anyways. And I feel like the order of finish was, John Tory wins, and I feel like Doug Ford finished second, and Olivia Chow finished third.
Yep.
As I recall, it's tough to cut through that noise too, right? Like that was a tough hill to climb for David, because those are three huge names.
Huge names, and in Ford's sense, obviously anything a Ford does makes news. And then in Tory's sense as well, like he had spent so many years on the radio and like getting to know folks. And
right.
So it was difficult.
But in many ways, it's, we're going to get you to 640 in a moment, but in many ways, it is 640 that makes, let's get these right, that makes Rob Ford. Like it's the John Oakley show that kind of creates this character who would come on his show and talk about, this counselor, I don't know who we pick on, Adam Vaughn or something. Adam Vaughn bought an espresso machine for $330 and it's the taxpayers are paying for it. And he would kind of go off on that and that kind of populist sentiment. I feel like Rob Ford was made by AM 640.
100%. And I would say even when I was still on air on AM 640, anytime the bottom line would ring, we would call it the Doug line, because we knew Doug was calling in to the show. My board op would be like, Doug line's ringing. And so they would just have the direct, call into the show.
Who was your board op? Do you remember?
Dave Spargala.
Okay. I just like the...
Shaggy Dave.
I know this guy because I know Pete Kick. And I feel like Pete Kick is buds with Shaggy Dave. So, and I feel like this name I've heard, Brother Bill. I do this thing on Blue Sky. You're not very active on Blue Sky.
No,
What are your thoughts on Blue Sky?
I think it's fine. I think it's for a bunch of Twitter refugees, I guess.
100%.
For the most part. But it's like, it's not the vibe of Twitter. Everything is...
But you can't go home again. I mean, we're all looking for 2009 Twitter.
Yeah, I think that's right. And this doesn't quite do it, but I mean, there are fewer overt Nazis on there, so that's a win.
that's a big win for me. But anyway, I do this thing where I go, who is on Toronto Mike on this day in history? So, for example, today I go in, I search my RSS for the date, and then I pull them out. Like Leo Rowdens came over the morning after the double overtime win in Game 3 against the Bucks of the 2019 Raptors playoff run, which might be the most significant victory in that run, which we, of course, win the championship. So, that happened. And then I just saw Brother Bill made his Toronto Mike debut on this day in 2020 or something like that. And I feel like Brother Bill would talk about Shaggy Dave. Is that the name you call him? Shaggy?
Yeah. And in fairness, Dave keeps a shaved head. Like the reason why they called him Shaggy is because he started as an intern, and in his initial badge, his chorus badge to get in and out of the building, like the security badge.
Yeah.
He had very shaggy hair, and for whatever reason, the name just stuck.
Because sometimes you do encounter a very skinny person, and people will call them Fats, like an ironic nickname, right? Or the opposite sometimes. Okay, so shout out to Shaggy Dave if he's listening, and hello to Pete Kick. Pete, I miss your brother. I'm just gonna put that out there. I miss your brother. Okay. So tell me, and by the way, just Supriya, as I get to know you better pre-640, I find it interesting that you only arrive here in this city in August 2013. But you really make an impact off the top, like off the bat. Like you're contributing to the Toronto Sun, right?
Yeah.
Toronto Sun, CBC.
Yeah.
1010 with John Moore there.
Yeah.
You're working with David Soknacki on the mayoral race of 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do you get paired with FOTM Matt Gurney? FOTM means friend of Toronto Mike. You're now an FOTM, Supriya.
Oh, fun.
So welcome to club. That means you're going to leave here with a lasagna. It's in my freezer right now, sent over by Palma Pasta. Do you enjoy Italian food?
I love it. Love myself a good lasagna.
It's going to pair nicely with your Great Lakes beer there. Yeah. So you're going to go home with that because you're an FOTM. So how do you end up paired with Matt Gurney to take over for John Oakley, who is going to move from mornings on AM 640 to the afternoon drive?
So Gurney and I actually first would have crossed paths on CJAD 800 on those free-for-alls. I think what had happened was he was doing a lot of the 1010 stuff and was looking to get, just more airtime under his belt. And so I think it was probably John Moore, although we can confirm that with either Gurney or John.
Okay.
But who'd said, oh, why don't you reach out to the CJD folks and, and they'd paired Matt and I together. And from there we became friends. And then I moved here and then we had beers, in real life. And we were, just got along quite well, irrespective of our different political leanings. And
yeah, he's very conservative.
Yeah. I think he's I wouldn't call him, I would call him a very traditional kind of dyed in the wool blue Tory from the 90s, early 2000s type. And when I was approached by Chorus about this revamp of the morning show, they had asked me if I had any co-hosts in mind. And they asked Gurney the same thing, unbeknownst to both of us, that they had asked us the same question.
Wow.
And we both answered each other.
It's like the dating game.
Yeah. And because we had both answered each other, Nathan Smith, who would have been the station manager at the time, was like, well, first of all, check plus, the fact that you both mentioned each other. And then we did, a dry run or whatever, where they have you come into the studio.
Like a chemistry test?
Yeah, it was kind of like a fake show. So they had where they do just a expedited 30-minute, what it would be for us to do banter and, throw to traffic and whatever else. And we did well, evidently. And
well, you passed the audition.
Yeah. And then they were like,
as
okay.
John Lennon would say.
Do you guys want to do this? And I think the answer for both of us was, hell yeah, we want to do this.
And Gurney at the time, best known for his work at the National Post.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, go find Matt Gurney in the Toronto Mike archives for the ongoing history of Matt Gurney. There's great chat in there. Do we I can't remember. Did John Oakley decide he wanted to work afternoons? Why was he leaving the morning show? Because he had been there since he replaced Humble and Fred.
Yeah.
And the fun fact there is that today I produced the Humble and Fred show. So we're all connected here, Supriya, is what I'm telling you. But was it John Oakley who decided he wanted to sleep in? Is that what happened there?
I'm honestly not sure. I don't know if I would have been privy to any of those conversations. I just got the end result, which was Chorus Management coming to me and Matt.
Right. And this is when you rebrand. I'm trying to remember my ongoing history of AM 640, but you rebrand to Global News Radio at around this time, right?
Yeah, because I think the Chorus had just bought out Shaw. Was that it? Or they'd merged, or Shaw had merged with Chorus or something. So they were trying to do this brand refresh, not just from the actual content, but just, what we were calling ourselves. And that was the first iteration. And then it kind of turned into Toronto 640 at some point, did it not?
Oh, it's had many monikers over the years here. Absolutely. The one I just call it is AM 640. I don't worry about what the heck they've added on to this.
I mean, that's the dial. That's the main thing, Yeah.
Well, because let's face it, AM talk radio, the bulk of listenership, you may tell me I'm very wrong here, but I believe it is people in traffic.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
Therefore, you need to know where to find it on your radio dial.
Yeah.
Okay, so AM 640. Now, we're going to get you a new co-host in a moment, another FOTM, but how did it go with you and Matt Gurney? I think you guys were paired together for, I don't know, at least a year and a half.
Yeah, I mean, I think it went well. Gurney and I, we got along quite well. They bake in these ratings targets or whatever that you have to hit throughout, and Gurney and I, we matched and surpassed all of them. So from a,
well, that's good.
Yeah, exactly. So from an objective perspective, I think that worked. And then I think what they wanted to do about a year and a half or almost 2 years in, I think what had happened was Stafford had filled in for Gurney a few times, just, if Gurney was sick or whatever. And the station manager and the powers that be were like, whoa, her and Staff sound really good together. And they made the switch.
So they moved Matt out of mornings, and he got like a 9 a.m. to noon.
Yeah, I mean, him and Stafford essentially did the switcheroo. Right. We were talking before about Doug and Rob, so him and Staff just did that, where Staff came to mornings, and then Gurney went to 9 to noon.
All right, I don't even know if I need to disclose this. These are all FOTMs. I'm disclosing it already, but I have a soft spot for Mike Stafford.
And we
do
all
I need
do.
to disclose that?
No,
too?
I don't think so. We all do. Yeah.
Okay, we all do.
Yeah.
So, again, for you 640 heads out there, Gurney moves to 9 a.m. Stafford. By the way, I had Stafford over while he was doing these morning show fill-ins.
Crossovers?
Yeah, the fill-ins.
Okay,
So before he got the gig. And I asked him straight out, because every radio person I talk to, their goal is to get a morning show. Like, this is the holy grail of radio, is to get the morning slot. Maybe that's because it's the most lucrative. Or maybe none of the slots are lucrative anymore. Maybe the money has left the building there. But that's what Aaron Davis told me. She's like, well, the money is left. So, unless you're Marilyn Dennis or something like that, or maybe John Moore's doing okay. But okay. So we have Mike Stafford moving into the mornings. But when he came over doing the fill-ins, I asked him straight out, like, do you want the morning show? And he said, no way, no how is he getting up at that time of day. Like, he just said no chance. And then I think he threw in a caveat, like, well, everything has a price. Like, he throws in this caveat. So if they throw enough cash at him, he might set his alarm for an early morning. But what was it like co-hosting that morning show with Mike Stafford?
I mean, it was great. It was just like constant laughs all the time. And folks that would have listened to us at the time would have known that we had a number of jokes just between us and, Shaggy Dave operating the board, HP, who was our, Heather, who was the producer, would come in and chime in regularly.
Want to hear a fun fact story? I think you know this, but Heather now works for Brad Bradford. Yeah, except that Brad Bradford, I just booked him as a guest on the Nick Ianni's podcast, which I mentioned in the intro, which is called Building Toronto Skylines. So shout out to Nick Ianni's, who stepped up to help fuel the real talk over here. He's a sponsor of this program, and the listenership should know Brad Bradford and Nick Ianni's toe-to-toe. We're going to record Friday. I'll drop it at some point Friday, but subscribe to his awesome podcast, Building Toronto Skyline.
Make sure Heather gets one of those beers or whatever.
Well, she came here with Brad when he was over earlier this year, and I'm pretty sure I sent her home with something.
I just looking out for
I
my
like her
girls,
very
so.
much.
Yeah.
She seems lovely. Okay.
Yeah, so with Staff, it was just, I don't know, it was fun, it was seamless. In, the lead up to me leaving, I also, I become pregnant, I give birth, I go on mat leave. I take a brief pause from mat leave to come back in for the 2019 election, because Global had asked me to do election night and to do a bunch of stuff for them, like writing columns and whatever. So I did that. But essentially, for a good chunk of 2019, I'm not around because I'm, with a bebe.
You're the Kate. So obviously, we're going to talk about why you leave Chorus. But while I believe, so there's a couple of Stafford infractions that have been discussed in great detail with Mike Stafford himself, who drops by once in a while. And he was most recently in this basement in February of this year. So you can hear Mike Stafford only a few months ago talking about what's going on with him and his life and everything. That's in the Toronto Mike archive. But one of these infractions happens after you leave. But there's one where he went on Twitter and he was talking about a wait at a hospital. And he talked about Apu.
I was also not there for that. I think I was on mat leave. I was only told about it after the fact. And then the other infraction happened when I was like fully unplugged, and it was nobody from the station had told me anything. It was actually text messages from Adrian Batra, who was a friend of mine and a regular guest on the show at the time, to be like, yo, you might want to check in with someone because I don't know what's going down, but I'm hearing it's not good.
So the first infraction was these tweets, and I think Stafford was obviously not dismissed.
And he was joking. And if anybody knows Stafford, can read them in his voice, where he knows where, like, you know, they're whatever. Station management's decision was to not have anyone address it. My suggestion was, you know, he's making a joke about a poo. I mean, I am fucking Indian, like, for crying out loud. So, like, sorry for the swear.
You can swear.
Okay.
This isn't 640.
Yeah. And so it's like, why don't we just have an open, honest conversation about it? About, like, you know, why he tweeted what he did,
right?
What the intent was. And as somebody, I wasn't going to be there as a representation of all brown people to be like, I absolve you, white man. But just to have an honest conversation. I think we do a disservice to everyone involved if we don't address things head on. And sometimes it's okay to be a little bit uncomfortable, and then it's okay to have these imperfect folks that represent us online or, you know, on the radio, whatever. As long as you see growth and as long as somebody's heart is in the right place, I think it's fine to make mistakes.
I think your instincts are spot on. You're 100% right. Like, I think that would be compelling to hear an open, I mean, really, because of nature abhors a vacuum, and 640 just pretends it doesn't happen. It all happens in this basement. Okay? Seriously, it's like, I got to get Stafford over and find out what did he mean by this and what happened. Because the public result, if you will, was that the Mike Stafford Twitter account was deleted.
Yeah.
Like, he deleted his Twitter account. I don't think this was ever referenced on 640, but of course we did talk about it in this basement for sure. But so that, you know, I don't know, he got a slap on the wrist and was told be careful, and he deleted his Twitter account. But you were not there. We're going to talk about why you leave in a moment. But when you heard about his, he used the P slur, in a...
Do you want me to say it?
You can say it.
Packy?
Right. It was in a Teams chat, I guess, internally with the station, with the chorus there. And next thing you know, it's screen capped. And I think Canada Land wrote a piece about it, I think. But yeah, what like, you don't have to absolve him because you're Indian, as you said. But what did you think when your friend Mike Stafford posted the piece there?
So again, nobody from the station had reached out. I hear about this, and I don't think it was Team. I think it was like whatever. We had this weird production. Anyway, whatever. The equivalent of Teams, whatever. So on Teams, this is said. Adrian messages me, and I'm like, okay, what's going on?
She's your source for all things Stafford.
Yeah, exactly.
All Stafford slip-ups.
Yeah. So I then start texting producers that I know would be in the know, and we would have been privy to what was going back and forth. And I get those screen grabs, and I go, okay, so what was actually said, and I don't remember verbatim the exact phrasing, but Staff again was making a joke. Stafford was making a joke,
right?
Basically implying, and I believe this was about the premier. It was about Doug Ford.
It was 100%. He was saying what Doug Ford would call it.
Would want to say, or how he would stop himself from saying something using the P word as a slur. That gets posted in the chat. It's screen grabbed. It gets sent around. Again, nobody tells me anything except for Adrian, who fills me in afterwards. Right. I call Staff. I'm like, why did you do that? And he was like, right. I know. He's like, but I thought it was like, I thought it was funny. And I was like, yeah, man, like, I see it. I see where you were trying to go with this.
Okay. I have the quote just so we're not like trying to guess here. But yeah. So this internal Teams comment was, and I quote, I had $5 at home that he'd slip and call it the P word. He wrote the P word, but P word variant. I don't even, why? I'm scared. Like, I'm not scared, but I feel like I shouldn't say that word. Like, it would trigger somebody for like a white guy to say that word.
I mean, it's not triggering me. It's fine.
It's not triggering you? Okay. So I had the same problem with the F slur with Scott Thompson was over, and I was, there's a skit like called The Running Faggot. Like, this is a skit on Kids in the Hall, but it's like, someone doesn't want to hear a white guy. Sorry, not a white guy for that one, but a straight guy say that. Okay. I had $5 at home that he'd slip and call it the Packy variant. So this is
Was this about COVID? Was that
COVID. It was 100% about COVID. 100% about COVID. And I see, knowing Stafford as well as I do, I 100% get the joke he's going for. He's very smart. He's a very smart guy. He was on Jeopardy, and he's really clever. He's a great talk show host. And like I said, I root for the man, and I have a soft spot for him. But I think we're living in an age, and I'm thinking of Wendy Mesley now, who in an internal conversation used the N-word because it was the title of something she was referencing. But she didn't say N-word. She said the N-word.
Yeah.
And that was like she was shortly thereafter, no longer at CBC. But I feel like we used to think context was everything. And I think we were wrong in 2025, at least. The content trumps the context. Like, it doesn't matter why you're using the P variant. And it is a funny, clever joke that Stafford's making here on an internal Teams chat. But just the fact that a white guy spelled out the P slur, that's enough now. If someone screen caps that and sends it to HR, he will be let go after 25 years of service with 0 severance.
So I would also say, had he done that in isolation, I don't think things get screen grabbed and passed around and dealt with in the way that it did. I think had the previous infraction not happened with the tweet referencing Apu, it goes away with a slap on the wrist. He goes to some, HR mandated whatever. And
sensitivity training.
Yeah. And that sort of ends there. And I also think it probably mattered at the time that, the executive producer of the station wasn't a Stafford fan. And so I think that probably played into a lot of it.
Is it, again, possible, we don't know anything, so possibly somebody may have wanted Stafford out and that this was pass the gun over to Chorus?
Maybe. Again, like I was, tapped out dealing with a small baby in the middle of COVID. So I wasn't necessarily plugged into all of the, inter-office sort of politics that were folks that would have been gunning for the job at the time. But I think, I don't think it was handled, totally right. And I think it's unfortunate the way things played out the way they did.
So when Stafford came over the first time after being dismissed, it was like, I can't remember how much time you have to file like a
grievance or whatever.
Yeah, I forget what the time is. Is it 1 year or 2 years? I can't remember. Whatever it is, we were almost there. And he starts talking about it. And Lorne Honickman, of all people, listened to Toronto Mike and heard this story. And Lorne got a lawyer to work on contingency because Stafford's problem is he doesn't have any upfront money. He has to, and that is still active. So that's on February, we got that update from Stafford, which is that Chorus is dragging this as slow as molasses here because this is years now. But Stafford's still trying to get some severance that he believes is owed to him from that dismissal.
Well, keep fighting the good fight.
That's a Triumph song? Is it? I don't know. Okay, well, that all comes back to Gilmore and that frickin' gong. By the way, what are your thoughts on Apu? Can I ask you? I'm a huge Simpsons fan, and I get why he's no longer voiced by Hank Azaria, but they deleted him from the program. You don't hear his voice on The Simpsons anymore.
So I don't think I've watched an episode of The Simpsons for the last 20 years. Now, I'm a huge fan of seasons 3 to 8, okay?
Sure.
Like they were in, my husband and I worked a Simpsons quote both into our wedding vows. Stafford and I, again, anybody who would have listened to the show, we would have referenced it constantly.
Right.
My thoughts on Apu are that his accent is bad. Hank Azaria's accent is objectively bad in terms of an Indian accent. And that's, I think, more offensive than anything else in the year 2025 or whenever it was he was canned. I don't think it's terrible to have a white character voice a brown character, but I think for folks that would have been, annoyed at the fact that it was a very stereotypically poorly done accent, I think that is where the sort of crux of it me and Andrew Lawton actually went back and forth on Apu. When he was filling in for Stafford, and he would have come into the Toronto studio and we did a little thing on it. And I said, again, I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was some version of exactly this.
Do you think they could recast Apu with a actor of South Asian descent that then carry on with this character that was really beloved? I thought Apu was a very likable, important character.
I mean, sure, but this, I don't know. Do you watch Simpsons still?
So I have a 9-year-old who watches on Disney Plus. So I have seen episodes from this current season. So yes, but I don't watch it the same way you. It's not the 3 to 8 that you're talking about. Yeah. So I used to buy the DVD seasons, and I stopped after 10. So I got to.
I have till 10 too, because I bought 9 and 10 out of loyalty, and that's
But I drew the line at 10. But in real time, I think I got a few. I don't know your age, but I think I might have a few years. But in real time, when I was recording every Sunday night at 8, I was recording a VHS. The episode that really made me feel like they had lost their way and were done was the episode where Lisa and Bart face each other in a hockey game.
Oh,
so
yeah.
but now because my daughter watches on Disney Plus, I'm revisiting it all. That's season 6, okay? No, they're pretty damn good through like 15, 16, 17. Like Simpsons are strong almost till season 20. The current episodes are really different. Like they're not as funny. That they don't have the number of jokes per episode ratio they had back in those glory days, those Conan O'Brien years and all that.
Yeah, that's it.
Like the monorail and all that.
And the Schwartzwelder episodes.
Yeah. He's a god. Now, but now they do more defunky things. Like they'll do an episode where they mimic like an anime style, and they'll do these like stunty episodes, which are kind of interesting to consume. They're just not as funny, but they're kind of neat. But they don't do the same. How many jokes are there in like the snake whacking episode, right? Like go count the jokes in the Homer Goes to College episode. Like the jokes per minute ratio, nothing higher. Those Glory Simpsons seasons.
Yeah.
Okay, but Apu, so it's a bad accent. Now, one thing I will say, one of the big Apu episodes are when what's the actor's name? Woods. Who's the I almost called him Jeff Woods, who's our former Q107 radio personality. James Woods. Okay, so James Woods was getting a movie role where he played a convenience store worker. So to get in that role, he takes Apu, and then to get Apu's job back, because he got caught on that camera in the big hat. Remember this camera in the big hat? He picked a hot dog off the floor and he put it back and sold it, and he got fired. So they had to go to India and climb a mountain to speak to the head of the Quickie Mart. Like, to me, this is like casual, mild racism against South Asian people. That like this pilgrimage to meet the bearded guru who is the head of the Quickie Mart to get Apu his job back. So I feel like there were some trouble spots maybe from the 90s where anything seemed to go. But I do miss the character because he was a key member of Springfield that we love seeing.
So in a current episode of The Simpsons, they walk into the Quickie Mart. Who greets them?
No, there's no Quickie Mart.
They just wrote it out.
Like they, instead of Hibbert. So Dr. Hibbert was a white guy playing a black character.
Yeah.
And they recast it. So there's still Hibbert. The voice is a little different, but it's a black actor now. Apu, for whatever reason, deleted. There's no Apu anymore.
That is odd.
Yeah. They didn't recast it. They just sort of said, we're not going to bother with Apu anymore.
I mean, I guess because current watchers don't even know who he is anymore. Well, maybe that's it.
I feel like with Disney Plus, even the current watchers are going back to see the glory days, right? Like I feel like, and my 9-year-old can quote episodes from season 4.
Okay, that's impressive.
Yeah, she's incredible with her IQ, her Simpsons IQ.
Yeah,
she's quite something actually. All right, okay, my goodness, we have to get you out of chorus, Supriya. This is amazing, but we'll hear it from you. So I'm not going to read what, of course, I read at the time, but I believe it was November 2020. You announced on the air you were leaving the show. Why did you leave chorus?
So let's rewind a little bit. Gurney and I start in 2016, right?
Yeah.
Our first show, second show, it was like time to the U.S. election. Okay. So
Sure.
Gurney and I walk in, and we keep getting these weird emails about, why aren't we talking about John Podesta and pizza? Why aren't we talking about Hillary Clinton and pizza? Why aren't we talking about the Democrats' connection to pedophilia and pizza? And we're like, what the fuck are all these emails? This is so bizarre. Yeah. We would later find out, of course, that they were referencing Pizzagate. Which is where this guy went to a pizza parlor in DC under the guise of there being children there held by high-ranking Democrats in the basement of this pizzeria that didn't have a basement. He shows up.
It's like the Alamo.
Yeah, he shows up armed, full with guns, is arrested, whatever, and since then, Pizzagate has become like, a well-known conspiracy theory.
Is that like a QAnon thing?
Sort of. I think that's where QAnon kind of molded into afterwards. Yeah. And so that was the first iteration, but it was very clear for both Gurney and I, and then eventually Stafford and I, that there was just a bunch of demonstrably false stuff that was being said on the station. And in a Canadian context, a few examples of this would be there was a motion to condemn Islamophobia, a very anodyne motion, nothing super controversial. Again, a motion, not a bill, but hosts on the station, as well as contributors on the station, were, kept calling it a bill and kept saying it was going to criminalize any criticism of Islam, which is bonkers crazy, okay?
Right.
And there's a bunch of examples like this, like the UN Global Compact on Migration is another one, which again, a very anodyne multilateral document that's signed by a bunch of countries, ends up being described on air as, a commitment that Canada would no longer control its borders, and our immigration targets were going to be set by a global government at the UN. And, we now know, and Politico has reported on this extensively, that that iteration of that conspiracy theory started out on like neo-Nazi message boards in Western Europe and kind of evolved to that. So there are a bunch of these points where whenever it was in the news cycle about Muslims, immigrants, indigenous folks, Black Lives Matter later on, sure, even Pride, my personal hate mail would spike. And that's fine. I have a tough skin. I have a thick skin. You can come at me all you want. There were a few moments throughout my time at AM 640 where it would have been a little bit more, quite frankly, scary. Gurney used to have to walk me in and out of the building for about a 2-week period.
Wow.
There was another period where my husband was away for work and wasn't, because he would drive, when things would get really rough, he would drive me in, watch me walk into the building, and then pick me up, watch me walk out. And he wasn't going to be there. So Nathan, the station manager, got me taxi chits to make sure that I wasn't going to be going in and out of the garage by myself at that time, because there was a real worry. You
were receiving threats?
Yeah. Like very detailed rape and death threats. So we're not talking shut the fuck up, you dumb cunt. It's like, shut the fuck up, I'm going to rape you with 4 other men in the chorus garage at 4:30 in the morning because we know when you pull in, it's empty.
Wow.
So very specific. And this is what I think folks don't tend to realize is that it's not mean tweets. It's not mean comments. It's a specific threat. And I know how to differentiate between the two. Like I used to have on my desktop, it would go threats. It was a folder on my desktop, and then it would go rape as one and then death as the other. And then threats would be like generic, no actionable item, where it's just like, you deserve to be raped. That's not a threat. That's saying I deserve to be raped. Sure, fine. But that's not like in terms of legality and in terms of, what I can action on that, I can't action anything on that. So this happened a bunch of times. I went to station management a bunch. And Gurney went to them and Stafford went to them. Both co-hosts had my back 100% throughout all of it. Station management, for whatever reason, didn't take any of what any of us had said super seriously. I think they thought they were, but materially nothing had really, or substantively nothing had changed. And then fast forward to I come back from mat leave and I get a very particular gross threat targeting my then infant daughter, talking about how a raping that would, affect her would mean a much bloodier vagina than anybody who was of age.
It's horrible.
And I received that, right, because you log into the morning show, and again, this is during COVID, so I'm doing it from home. Greg Brady's in studio with Shaggy Dave as the board op. Heather and I are both working remotely, and we would all converge onto this Google Doc in the morning at like 4:30 in the morning to go over topics and whatever. And Heather, so I opened my inbox. It was sent to me overnight, and I wasn't responding on the Google Doc. So Heather texts me, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just need a minute. Tell Dave I need 30 seconds to pad me before we go, because I needed to collect myself. Like I couldn't. I had these words, and I was like, what the fuck am I even reading?" So they patted me. Everything was good. I did the show. I finished the show. I go into my bedroom and I cried because I was like, this is really messed up. I tell my husband and he's like, okay, like any man, like, and I say this with love again, is like, well, let me read it. Like, are you sure it was maybe, just because they invoked her, it was like, is more, emotional for you or whatever. He reads it and he's like, oh no, fuck, there's no gray area there. That is 100% a rape threat against our infant daughter. And I was like, okay, I'm done. I was like, are you okay if I quit and I don't bring in that sweet, sweet morning show money anymore or whatever else? And he was like, do what you have to do. Like, this is not, you shouldn't have to do this, especially after you've given them, 4, 5, 6 formal complaints about this, all logged with HR. And that's when I decided I was going to leave because I didn't want to be in a situation. It's one thing if I have to look over my shoulder when I'm at the grocery store or when I'm at a bar or out or whatever. It was a completely different thing to me to consider walking my daughter in her stroller or like pushing her on a swing and always having to look over my shoulder if there was somebody there or like what was happening.
No, I completely get that. But the latter is also unacceptable, right? Like, even if you were childless, like the fact
of course.
that, I know.
Of
yeah,
course.
so it's
Yeah.
just, yeah. I have questions here.
Yeah, ask more.
All right. You filed a complaint with the Canadian Human Rights Commission?
I did, yeah.
So what happened with that? Like, I often hear about from media people like Jennifer Valentine, for example, or, Mike, young woman who was a weather woman at CP24, whose name will come to me in a moment. But I do hear occasionally about Canadian Human Rights Commission's complaints that are filed by media people like yourself. Like, whatever happened to that?
So I withdrew my complaint because Chorus and I settled amicably outside of the official court tribunal commission system.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to read just something you said. So, because you did make a comment on air, right, when you were leaving, right? So when you announced on the air why you were leaving. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you said, I can no longer be part of an ecosystem that tolerates and in some cases actively sows division and discord. As a female, racialized journalist, I have been subject to rape threats against me and my 17-month-old daughter, and absolutely abhorrent statements from members of the public when I attempt to counter and correct the misinformation and false narratives promoted by other hosts and guests on the station. So I think that part's interesting, where it's not just misinformed listeners that are writing you these horrific emails, but you feel...
No, it was driven by the folks on air that like had control of the mics. 100%.
They don't chat. Like, if somebody brought up some QAnon thing about Muslims that you knew was false, they wouldn't be challenged by these on-air hosts. They might even be maybe even just tolerated, even encouraged, possibly.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's how Matt and I found ourselves in Pizzagate situation, was because they were tolerated and laughed about and not challenged by the former folks that would have been occupying those mics. And it honestly became a bit of a pattern where once we would check our emails in the morning, we would know what had been talked about in the late afternoon to the evening, dependent on what we were getting hit with.
So when you receive a specific threat, did you consider going to the police?
Oh, I went to the police many times.
Well, I gotta know.
Many times. The police, unless something is uttered to you in person, and again, this may have changed. Hopefully it has changed. But in those days, if it was communicated electronically, it wasn't taken seriously.
Wow.
And then it was just like, well, what do you want us to do about it? I once had somebody call me on my personal cell phone with a number not blocked, telling me they were going to kill me. And Toronto police was like, well, what do you want us to do about it? And I was like, I don't know. I have their number. Why don't you call them back? And it was like, I don't know what we would say. And it's just like, okay, fine. So towards the end, and that's why Gurney had to be the one to walk me in and out.
Yeah.
Because he was like, it's like, I want you to be safe and I want to ensure that you're safe. So I'm going to do it myself because I don't trust buildings, whatever management was doing. And at the time, the lackluster response from TPS.
Like, this is disappointing on several fronts, Supriya. Like how management handled it, the fact there are colleagues of yours that will receive these false narratives about refugees, for example, or other groups, and don't challenge it. And the fact that police don't do anything either. Like, you're sort of left to your own devices. Like, no wonder you quit.
Yeah, look, I think, yeah. And I mean, I think police may take online threats a touch more seriously. I would like to think management knows what to do a little bit better. But I mean, if you're thinking about like false narratives or whatever that are put on air, I think it's only gotten worse since. I don't think it's gotten any better. And I think whatever, window dressing AM 640 was going to put on of a smart radio instead of dashboard pounding radio, which is how it was sold to me.
Right.
They have completely abandoned. I don't know if there's a single non-white hosts on any of Chorus's networks. Maybe I know out west they do on CKNW. But aside from that, I'm not sure in any major drive show. I'm not sure what the producers look like anymore that are producing the show. But I can tell you, I heard from at least 3 different producers at AM 640 since I left, all complaining to me about the exact same thing.
Oh, it's honestly super disappointing to hear this. And a quick aside here is that I often would read about this alternate reality that some people were living in, right? But I didn't actually know anyone in person. Although in the last couple of weeks, I've spent a lot of time with Snow, okay? The guy who...
Informer?
Yeah. And super likable guy.
Yeah.
Like, just charismatic. Like, I spent my wife and kids were hanging with him on Sunday at Christie Pitts. I'm going to get back to that in a moment. But like, I really like being around him and talking to him. But once in a while, he'll give you some insight into this alternate reality that he believes. And it is startling when you realize, oh, I'm in this person believes in this alternate
like
reality.
The moon landing being fake or something like that. Or
well, more like Trump breaking up these pedophile rings and all this stuff. And it's like, you can't really like reason with them or whatever. You sort of just have to kind of smile and nod and change the topic or whatever. It's kind of disturbing, to be quite honest.
Yeah. And I think it's extra disturbing once you realize that we have these very large, powerful tech companies that don't care if your friends and family or even yourself are being trapped into these rabbit holes because the algorithms are optimized for engagement. And guess what engages people?
Yeah.
Not happy things, not
Rage.
good things, rage.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like that quote from The Wire, like, the only way you cannot lose is if you do not play. It's like, okay. So, I told Snow, I said, Snow, you should watch The Wire. It's my favorite show of all time. So I just tell everyone they should watch The Wire. That's what I do. And Snow's like, I live The Wire. So there you go. Okay. So you leave, Stafford remains. So this you departing was November 2020 when you made that announcement. I'm sorry for you that you had to go through that.
No, Staff had already left at that point. I think it was.
Is that right? Because I have Staff hanging around till June 2021. So my timeline is that you make that announcement, you're leaving in November 2020. Stafford stays on, but he has rotating guest hosts.
Oh, but wasn't Greg in?
Not yet. Like, no, Greg doesn't come in until Stafford is fired by Chorus for using that racial slur in that company group chat. So there is a half a year, let's say, where Stafford is the morning show host. I know you would know, you were there, but I also did. I am the official documentarian of the ongoing history of the Toronto radio scene. So I believe there's a half a year where you're gone from Chorus because you leave, but Stafford is still the morning show host because it's June 2021 when Stafford is fired for that racial slur, that P slur. There you go. And it was twice. So just for the timelines, for anyone paying attention.
But on my last show, they had Stafford call in.
Well, he broke his neck, right? Like, so I feel like...
that's what it was.
Yeah,
okay, that's what
Stafford,
it was.
well,
yes, of course. Because I was like, why was Greg the one on air then with me?
Yeah, Greg was doing a lot of fill-in, Greg Brady.
Okay, you're right. Sorry.
No.
So that's what my...
Listen, this is... somebody's got to give a shit about what's going on.
Yeah.
Right? So it's left...
I know, but it's my life. I should... But yeah.
Yeah. So Stafford definitely is... He's not fired till June 2021. He's been over a couple of times. Maybe... Yeah, he's been over 3 times since then. I will say the Mike Stafford visits are very highly consumed, very popular episodes because it's the only chance you get to find out what's going on with Mike Stafford. And I think a lot of people who listen to Stafford on 640 really care about the man because he's a great broadcaster. And, you mentioned Simpsons. We talked about Simpsons earlier. I would be on back when I had a commute. I haven't had one in a long time, but I used to hear Stafford do Simpsons trivia afternoons on 640. And I was like, let's go. This is what I'm looking for. So a lot of people miss and love Stafford. But yeah, he lasts until June 2021. Okay, so when you leave chorus, we're going to find out what you've been up to. But may I give you another gift? Since you are blessing me with your presence. Even though you politely turned me down years ago, here you are. And so who do I thank for this? Is it Bruce Arthur who said you should do it? Whose opinion mattered so much you said, fuck it, I'll go to his basement?
I mean, I think both Bruce and Dave were like, you got to go. So, and it was on the spot. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it.
Yeah, what a random happening. I was just on my way. I was on my way to meet Cam Gordon and Tyler Campbell for a pre-change of heart beer. And there you all were. And yeah, all good guests of Toronto Mike, actually. Love talking to Bedini, too. Who's a big Leafs fan. Are you a Leafs fan?
I grew up in Montreal. What do you think that?
I don't think you're a Leafs fan then. Okay, well, at least we got a couple of rounds in. Okay, so we won't talk about the hockey Leafs. It's all very disappointing on that front. But I just want to let you know, Supriya, I don't know what neighborhood you call home.
Right now it's Oakville, but ideally not for too long.
That's not okay. Well, Oakville. Well, where's your ideal landing place in the city, neighborhood wise?
I mean, I plan on going back to Danforth, so that's where my husband and I were before we moved to Oakville. And I'm planning on moving
going back to the Danforth.
Yeah.
Now, there is excellent caliber baseball at Christie Pitts this summer, and the tickets cost you $0.00. Okay, this is really great value. I was there all day Sunday for the game, and it's high caliber ball. It was a great day. You get to fill the hill at Christie Pitts. You can drink beer you can drink beer in the park.
Amazing.
This is the history, Supriya, the history of Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. The Maple Leafs play at Christie Pitts. They have a Japanese woman who has made a couple of starts. Her name is Ayami Sato. First time a woman has played against professional men in the country of Canada. And that's been a fun story. She had a great first outing and a not so great second outing. So hopefully she bounces back for her third start. But yeah, making a lot of trips to the pits this summer to check out Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. And you could join me, Supriya.
No, I will. Now that I have a book.
You got it. You can hang out with me and the Snowman.
Yeah.
The official ambassador of Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. I have a measuring tape for you, Supriya. I don't know what you need to measure, but now you don't have to go looking for a measuring tape. That's courtesy of Ridley Funeral Home.
Okay. Thank you.
That is a great local funeral home, and I produce their podcast, Life's Undertaking, so people should subscribe and listen to Life's Undertaking. While you're subscribing and listening to Life's Undertaking, please subscribe to the 8th season of Yes, We Are Open, which is an award-winning podcast from Monaris, hosted by Al Grego. He went to Regina. Supriya, have you ever been to Regina?
I've never been to Regina.
Have you been to Saskatchewan?
No, actually. I've never been to Saskatchewan.
Have you been to Manitoba?
I've been to Winnipeg once as a kid.
Oh, as a kid.
Yeah, so it doesn't really count.
It doesn't really count because you weren't in control of your destiny.
No, I was there with my dad. He was there for some medical something or other. So it was just
So I'll quickly shout out to the most recent episode. Al sat down with Grant Frew, who is the bar and marketing manager at Bushwhacker Brew Pub in Regina, Saskatchewan. And Grant recounted his Bushwhacker's unique German beer-inspired roots and how it evolved to become a staple in Regina's brewing culture. And last but not least, before we find out what happens to Supriya Dwivedi post 640, I would like you to know about a website, recyclemyelectronics.ca. And if you, Supriya, have any old cables, old devices, old laptops, old electronics, I don't know, they're in a drawer.
I have a ton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Listen, I got the answer for you. You go to recyclemyelectronics.ca, you put in your postal code, and they'll say, hey, drop it off here to be properly recycled so the chemicals do not end up in our landfill. Got it, Supriya?
Got it.
Okay. So what happens to Supriya Dwivedi? And I will say this just as a side. I enjoy saying your name. I find it like a pleasant syllables to put together.
You know, Dwivedi rhymes with spaghetti.
Yeah, and I love spaghetti.
Yeah.
But only if it's from Palma Pasta.
Some like lasagna. Others like spaghetti.
Garfield.
But everyone loves Supriya.
Did you grow up
Dwivedi.
with the Garfield? Oh, I spoke over your grade. You know what? I'll clean it up in post. I'll get AI to get on that. We'll talk about AI in a minute. Okay. So, my goodness, I know you worked with Justin Trudeau. Is that possible? Like, what do you tell us in the order of things? What happens to you when you leave chorus? Like, you have a young child. Like, when do you get back to work, and what are you doing?
So I leave chorus towards the end of 2020, as you've noted. And I start getting, folks that want to have a coffee or whatever to talk about what I'm doing next. And I had a reach out from the chief of staff to the prime minister asking if I would be interested in coming on. And at the time I was sort of interested, but it was also Christmas, and I had been spent the last 4 years waking up at like 3:30 in the morning or whatever to go to work.
I was going to ask you what time you were waking up for that gig.
Yeah, 3:30. It wasn't great.
There's a 3:30? No.
Yeah, there's a 3:30 in the morning.
That's a bedtime.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
is that bad for your health?
Like, it's terrible. It's actually terrible for your health. Like waking up in the middle of the night, in terms of like your heart health, your cardiac health, it's bad.
But is
it's
the compensation enough for you? You're so bright. Here, I'm going to pat you on the back a bit. You're so bright, and you went to law school. You're well spoken, but you're interesting, well spoken. There's a lot of eggheads out there who are like paint dry or whatever. But you're interesting. You've got spunk. It's interesting to listen to your takes and spins on things. It's always intelligent. It's entertaining. You could do so much in so many places. Why go on an AM talk radio station where you have to wake up at 3:30 in the morning?
Because honestly, there's no bigger privilege than being let into folks' space. Like to talk into a mic and to have other people listen to what you have to say is just the biggest privilege in the world, and I wouldn't give that up for anything. Let like the one thing that I would give it up for is threats against my daughter.
Well, sure, but you could start
like I was fine with the threats against me. But
you could start a podcast.
Yeah, I could.
But you're like, no, like terrestrial radio, that's where that's.
Well, it's not just terrestrial radio. I mean, sure, I could start a podcast, but I mean, to build it up into whatever, I could do that. And
Stafford's looking for a co-host for a podcast. Like this is an active thing. I'm just putting that out into the universe there.
Yeah,
okay, yeah. So, have you had any contact with Stafford since he was let go from chorus?
We had a couple of phone conversations, but nothing recent. No. He may have messaged me. You know what? He almost certainly messaged me after my husband passed.
Well, my condolences.
Yeah,
I was going to get to that, but that's the worst.
Yeah,
that's horrific.
But to be very honest, there was just so many messages coming in at the time, and I was in my own fugue state. So, So anyway, let's just go on to what I did once chorus ended.
Yeah, I might start. Yeah.
Yeah. So chorus ends. I have the Prime Minister's office approach me. I don't end up going with the PMO at that time, and I end up working for Enterprise, which is again another like public affairs, government relations, strategic communications, and advertising firm. I have a great time working with them, but happening in parallel is because of I made a little bit of noise as I was exiting chorus, in terms of the impact disinformation has on our society and how it can actually, quite materially impact journalists that are on the receiving end of the polarization-driven hate. And I end up on this panel with Professor Taylor Owen. He's the director of the Center for Media Technology and Democracy at McGill University. And after we finish this panel, Taylor comes to me and he's like, so there are very few people that have had your lived experience, and there are even fewer people that can talk about this in an intelligent way without it being, to your point, eggheady, right? Like you're able to break it down and talk about it in normal terms, in regular parlance. And he was like, would you be interested in something working with the center? And I was like, yeah, sure, fine. Come to me in a bit. Like, let's see. He comes to me in a bit, and I start working for McGill, Center for Media Technology and Democracy, as their policy director. And that's when I really got steeped in the world of just how beholden society is to these giant big tech algorithms, and how much of our world is just shaped by it, how much of our reality is shaped by it, and how much the information ecosystem is just completely broken and fractured. And so if you are on a certain media diet or a certain algorithmic diet, I should say, your version of reality is going to be very different than my version of reality. And I don't know what to tell you, Mike, but if two people have very different versions of reality, you can't really make for a cohesive society, right? And there are all sorts of very real impacts that it has on capital D democracy. So as I'm working on all this and I'm working on algorithms and figuring out, the best way to sort of present to government a good way to go about it where you're preserving free speech, but also ensuring that there's accountability for big tech, my husband gets sick. So in January of 2023, he is diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. Anup was 40 years old. He had never smoked a day in his life. And very quickly shortly after him being diagnosed, I saw in real time how his algorithms were switched from here's a recipe for a green juice that'll help curb your chemotherapy-induced nausea to here's a crystal that can help cure your cancer. And for folks that have cared for somebody that has stage 4 cancer, they will know that once it's gone to your brain, the person isn't cognitively all there. And it became, towards the last few months, it was a constant sticking point between him and I and, between well-intentioned family and friends who had also been trapped by the algorithm coming to me for all these things. And it was tough. It was hard. Obviously, I'm dealing with losing the love of my life at a very young age with a young daughter. But then that on top of it was really eye-opening because I'd always known about it from like an academic sense. But to see, my very smart engineer of a husband get sucked into this, I was like, oh, wow, this is really quite something. And, the PM had called me, PM Trudeau had called me a couple of weeks after Anoop's funeral. And he said, I'm really sorry to hear about Anoop. You're going through a lot. I know you and Katie was chief of staff, have had these conversations in the past. I want you to know that this isn't about that. I'm just calling to check in on you. At whatever pace, at whatever time, there will always be a spot for you on my team. And that's how he left it. And then a couple of months after that, I emailed Katie and I was like, hey, so should we maybe talk again? And she was like, yes, please, let us talk again. And then we resumed our talks and I joined the Prime Minister's office as a senior advisor in January of 2024. My start date was actually a year to the day of us finding out about Anoop's diagnosis.
Yeah. No, again, my condolences again. That's just...
Sorry, it got real dark real quick.
No,
yeah.
No, but I knew, I knew that was possible. Yeah, I know what happened. Earlier in this episode when I shouted out Pete Kick and mentioned I missed Mike Kick. Mike Kick was my left fielder and I played third base. And then at 32 years old, he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. And that was at the end of the season and he was dead by the beginning of the next season. Like it took him so fast and he was the fittest, healthiest 32-year-old you would ever want to know. Anyway, fuck cancer.
Yeah, 100%.
We agree. Fuck cancer. Okay. Now, what exactly are you doing for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau? Like this whole idea that you're now executive director of communications is pretty amazing.
No. So that's Max Valikat's title. My own title.
Oh, that's not your title?
No. Because this is the thing. When Katie came to me the first time,
right,
it was going to be in a very delineated role. And I guess she had spoken to a few folks. I mean, I've known Katie for a while too, but I guess in speaking to some people and coming to me a second time, it was I needed to do something somewhat amorphous because I have many skills, some on the policy side, some on the comm side, some on the planning side, some on the operational side, where it was like I needed an amorphous title of senior advisor so I could do a smorgasbord of stuff.
Right. So like this is the time of the Donald Trump stuff and everything. Like how would you deal with the Donald Trump aspect? So
this was in the lead. I mean, I guess towards the latter end of it, it was, Trump had been elected. My main focus when I was in the Prime Minister's office was, I did a lot of stuff on digital policy. So like online harms, AI, that sort of thing. On the Trump stuff, there was ostensibly like a de facto war room, and I'm putting that in air quotes, kind of set up for folks to deal with that. I was more on the like issues management side, I guess, if things were to arise from Donald Trump. But it was, I mean, as this was all happening, you know, Donald Trump's elected in November. Chrysler Freeland decides to knife Justin Trudeau in the face in December. So like there wasn't a ton of time in between to really get a hold of anything one way or another.
So when, obviously, everybody knows Donald Trump. Justin Trudeau steps down. Mark Carney is elected as leader of the Liberal Party. So does your job end when Justin Trudeau steps down? Like when exactly do you leave this office, the PMO?
So when it became clear to me that, you know, Justin Trudeau was going to step down, I think most, if not every single senior person in that office left with him. That's not a knock on the new guy. Mark Carney, I think will do a fantastic job, but I think he's like literally built for this moment, you know, in a weird way, like as the economist who's going to shepherd us through this.
No, I think I put on Blue Sky where that like if you were going to go into a lab and you're going to like design who do you want leading Canada at this time? It's Mark Carney.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, exactly. But I think it's just, you know, you need a lot of trust in these roles, and I had known Justin Trudeau for some time. I known Katie for some time. I'd known the folks around us for some time. And quite frankly, I think a new prime minister should come in and fill the senior positions with his own people, folks that he feels comfortable with and the vision that he wants to go forward with. And it's a different prime minister's office. It's a very different Liberal Party, different priorities, and that's fine.
So what's next for you?
That's a good question. I don't know.
What do you want to do? You want to do it together?
I don't know. I like people keep asking me that, and I don't like. I'm selling my house right now in Oakville, so I need to get that over with, and then I will figure it out. I basically went from being a grieving widow to immersing myself into a job where I would have to work a minimum of 100-hour work week for a year and a bit to just now trying to sell my house and kind of get some sort of sense of normalcy, and I will figure what I do next.
You've dealt with a lot, really. Like you had this trauma that caused you to leave the radio gig, and then the worst thing that could possibly happen with a noop, and you're entitled to catch your breath and.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
I'm giving you. You don't need my permission, Supriya. You know that, but you can take a breather here, and you got your craft beer and your lasagna, and you can take a moment. Couple of just quick questions.
I love rapid fire.
Are you still active on Twitter? Or sorry, X?
No, we call it Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm sort of still active. I tweet every now and again, but I just find the algorithm is completely broken. So like a good example is there was a little bit of a conservative spat in very insider political circle world. And it didn't go anywhere. Like it got no pickup. Like in the olden times, a fight between Nick Cavalis and Jenny Byrne would have lit up the screen for days.
I have great nostalgia for old Twitter, like pre-Elon Twitter.
Yeah.
Great nostalgia.
Yeah. Just the way like it's first of all a chronology of it, like chronological order timeline.
Yeah.
Like please, can we bring that back? Like why am I getting tweets from 18 hours ago constantly?
One tweet of yours I'm going to bring up just because you're held captive in my basement here, and where are you going to go? But you did have a little go at Proud Boys.
Canada Proud,
yeah. Who are the Proud Boys? This is my ignorance.
So the Proud Boys are a designated terror entity, I believe, in Canada. Canada Proud is ostensibly an anti-liberal outfit who engages in harassing female journalists and promoting disinformation.
Okay, well, thank you for correcting me there. I've conflated the two in my mind. Okay, so Canada Proud is... can I read what you tweeted?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. And you'll remind me what you were replying to, because I didn't actually copy that. But probably around the time you're able to make a woman come. So never... I do have to pick up my daughter from my sister-in-law's place in like an hour, though, so we'll stop checking Twitter then. Like, that's kind of, I think, refreshing or whatever that like you can just call out Canada Proud on something like that? And
So I was replying to the fact of when, because what they had said to me was when Katie was going to come and take my phone away from me.
yeah, right.
So it was like probably when you're able to make a woman come, which is never fuckface, like because you're a bunch of incels living in your mom's basement.
And there's no repercussions for you tweeting from the hip like that.
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody loved.
Nobody had a chat with you after that or anything? Or
no, I mean, I went to Katie as soon as I popped that off, and I was like, "Yo, just so you know, I have to pick. Like, I'm like, I have to pick up Satya in an hour. So like, that's my kid. I'm like, I'm gonna go pick her up. I'm putting my phone away." And she's like, "Yeah, all good, no problem." And then saw, she was getting complaints, of course, from other people because Ottawa is a very pedestrian, Puritan town, and
so
apparently
you did what you kind of gave them this gun or whatever, like this loaded weapon or whatever, because there are people out to just gun you down because you're with the Liberal Party.
Yeah, sure. And I think,
and there was a lot of fuck Trudeau sentiment going on around that time.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of fuck Trudeau sentiment until the very last day.
And then they just rewrote it to fuck Carney.
Yeah. But this notion, and I just thought it was so funny that like, because after like I actually got on the phone with Katie, later that day or whatever, I'm like, I'm sorry. Like I'm sure it's been a headache for you. And she was like, don't worry about my headaches. Like, and she was just like, like, Supriya, me and the boss knew who you were when we hired you.
On that note, though, did you have a relationship with Justin Trudeau that predated this? Like, it sounds almost like, were you friends?
So, I mean, we weren't, I wouldn't call us friends, but I mean, I had interviewed him. So in September of 2023, I moderated a panel with him, Jacinda Ardern, Sanna Marin, and the Norwegian PM about like, how to preserve democracy in an era of like digital disinformation.
Right.
And because I had been on Power and Politics regularly and Question Period regularly as like a partisan sort of pundit, he was ostensibly somewhat aware of who I was, I guess. So we were friendly, certainly, I think, before I had the job.
Okay. I'm going to ask you another Liberal Party question I'm naturally curious about because I've had over on this program a couple of times Marcy Ian.
Love Marcy.
So Marcy was sitting in the seat you're sitting in now. Not that long ago. It was during the Liberal leadership race that Mark Carney eventually won. And I was asking her, I said, when this race is done, there's probably going to be an election called right away. Like, are you ready? And she was telling me how ready they were. And it wasn't many weeks later that it was announced she wasn't running again. And I'm wondering, do you know what the heck happened there? Like, do you have any insight into what happened with Marcy Ian not running and then Evan Solomon, former member of the media, taking that riding and winning for the Liberals?
So I would just say that I think to run again, like, even to be political staff is a lot. Like, you make a lot of sacrifices. You make, you have no social life. If you have a relationship, then like Godspeed, the best of luck to you. To be an elected official and to be a minister around that cabinet table, your heart doesn't have to be in it just 100%. Like, you have to be like all in above and beyond for it. I think what I can, and I hope Marcy doesn't mind me saying this, but I would imagine for her, it became a question of, do I still want to do this? Do I still have the 150% in me to keep going at this day after day? Do my kids really want to keep going through this, or whatever it was? Because she's very recognizable as well from her previous, era as a broadcaster.
Canada AM, The Social, sure.
Yeah. And I think, for whatever threats you think female politicians get, if you're a black woman, it's those threats are on steroids, man. And
but Supriya, I wish I had the exact date, but like literally this was the Liberal leadership race was in the midst or whatever when she looked me in the eyes and talked to me about how ready they were for this election that was.
I mean, that could still be. She was still. They were still ready,
but,
and then maybe she just didn't want to do it.
Okay. I just wondered if possibly in the inner workings of the Liberal Party, is it like, does she get a tap on the shoulder and told like Evan's going to run this run?
I think it would have been the opposite. I think she would have signaled to the Liberal Party saying, I'm not going to put my name forward this time around. And then the Liberal Party would have gone about to find somebody to run in that riding.
All right. Any thoughts on, okay, so Nate Erskine, is that how you say it? Smith? How do you say that name? Erskine?
I say Erskine Smith.
Erskine Smith. Okay, I'm not good at these common names. Okay. Was gunning for housing minister status, right? And then was sort
he
of
was
out of the
housing
cabinet
minister.
loop. Yeah, and was out of the cabinet loop this time. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that. That was a surprise to me.
Yeah, I think it was a mistake. I think they're going to look back on this and think it was a mistake. I think their entire approach to housing policy right now is a mistake. I don't think they realize the level of anger of folks 40 and younger that is percolating and has bubbled over. And I don't think anyone in the party and very few people in the Prime Minister's office really get and understand that anger. And I say that as somebody who is often the youngest, if not one of the youngest people around, a decision-making table. And, there's a clip of me from like 2017, way before joining the Prime Minister's office. I'm on the National with Wendy Mesley and Tasha Kierden and Stephen March, I think was the other panelist, where we're talking about housing prices. I had yet to purchase a home, and everybody's like laughing about like, well, millennials and housing prices, they should just move out further, move to Newmarket, move to Orangeville, move to wherever.
Right.
And I was just like, guys, I don't think anybody really understands. Like, at the time, I was a morning show host. I was making morning show host money. My husband's an engineer, making engineer money. Yeah. We have cash coming in from my in-laws to help with a down payment, and it was still difficult for us to get a job. I'm sorry, for us to get a house.
What are my kids going to do?
Well, this is the thing. And I don't think people fully realize that if like a young geriatric millennial couple, okay, needs the bank of mom and dad to help you with a down payment, each of us making six figures for years at that time.
Wow.
You're going to get in a situation where you can only be a homeowner if you're the descendant of a homeowner.
Yeah.
And that's some Hunger Games shit right there, man. Like that's some like surf style, like going back to a time where we don't want to go back to. And all of this nonsense of, well, we can't let housing prices. Yeah, I agree. We can't let them crash, but house prices have to go down. A starter home cannot be $1.2 million or whatever it is, 1.1 million, whatever it is in Toronto right now.
So this basement where you did clear the ceiling, so kudos to you.
Just barely.
Barely, but by like half an inch or something. But if I didn't buy this place with my wife 12 years ago, I could never ever afford this home today. I live in this like wake up in a cold sweat. Like, what would I do? Like, I have it now, so we're okay. And then I got 4 kids, right? A couple are young adults, and I don't know how they buy a home. And I don't know. It's scary out there.
Well, if you listen to Carney and Minister Robertson, they'll build it at scale somehow magically without your house
right? Gregor Robertson
coming down in price, and things will magically happen.
Okay, so you need to build new homes but not have a real estate bubble pop. Is that the balance?
Well, I think what they're saying is you build affordable homes at scale, which I agree with, but I think in order for you need some sort of correction. Like it doesn't make sense that these houses are what they are often, right? And people are going to have to see, unfortunately, some of their equity get lost. Yeah, that's just the only way. Otherwise, your kids, my kid, they're priced out.
Supriya, you've been amazing. So before I dismiss you, okay, you're almost done. You've done amazing. You gave me 90 great minutes, and at some point I'm going to probably politely ask you to come back, and then we'll see if you politely decline a return visit, okay? But beholden by big tech algorithms, I wrote that down because you said it. And I have a question about Facebook. Okay, so primarily it seems like this alternate reality, you mentioned depending how you consume your news, you may believe in one of two different like distinct quote unquote realities. But it seems like the people aren't able to share from reputable sources, be it CBC, whatever, CTV, whatever these reputable journalistic sources are. We're still unable to share this on Facebook, but these alternatives sometimes can leak in. I'm just wondering, what do we do? Because we talk about not only baby boomers, but I don't mean to pick on that generation, but there's a group of people who are getting their news primarily from Facebook, and their brains are slowly turning to mush.
Yeah, look, the generation that's getting their news primarily from TikTok, their brains aren't mush free either right now.
Okay.
So,
Right.
You know, for all of the bashing that millennials get, I think the fact that we were the first generation to like grow up, remember both, right? Like coming of age is what I mean. Like I still, in my day, we still had a one family computer with a dial-up internet, right?
Right.
And I think we were all sort of traumatized by not having to cite Wikipedia when we were in like high school and university and figured out how to do original research. You don't have that anymore. And then with generative AI, it's turned people's brain into mush even that much quicker. The sad answer to your question, I don't have an answer. Like I don't have how are we going to fix this? I think what we can do is we can hold tech platforms to account to ensure that they're not poisoning us with either AGI slop or with, brain poison of stuff that's demonstrably false. But whether or not we can get to that point is a question that remains to be seen.
Well, because I'm a stickler for a lot of like rather obscure Canadiana, if you will. Like I've noticed with the AI results you get off the top of these Google results now, I can really spot these hallucinations.
Yeah.
Right. And it's frightening to me that it's almost as if we somehow managed to break the internet. Like it again, this nostalgia I feel for like 2009 Twitter extends beyond that to good old Google back in the day. Like it just feels like we have a perfect storm to spread misinformation, to snow and the like.
We do. And I don't think there's any incentive to change it, especially when, again, you have 3 or 4 billionaires that control basically our entire information flow, and they are all American, and they're all in with this current U.S. administration. Like, think of that picture of Donald Trump with like Elon
dystopian.
and Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos
photo
behind, right? Like, that's bad. You have a bunch of techno-fascists that have been given the keys, and they're going to go forward with it.
And they are really bending the knee to the president of the United States to a point where if he decides, I don't know, the Gulf of Mexico is the Gulf of America, in America, you'll see it on Google Maps, right? Like it's to that point. So can you leave me like on our way out here? Can you leave me with any hope for the future? Or are we just like completely fucked?
So the hope I think we should have is that if you're in the EU or if you're in the UK or Australia, you do have better protections. And Canadians should be asking our lawmakers why we don't have those same protections and why a kid in Canada is demonstrably less safe on the internet, on Instagram, on TikTok, on whatever, than a kid in the EU, than a kid in the UK is. We should be demanding a same level of transparency and accountability, and don't let the Rebel and Canada Proud and True North and this right-wing disinformation machine poison you against it.
That's a nice watch. I've been checking it out. Seriously, that watch, this watch, yeah, it costs more than this home. Maybe that's a wonderful looking watch.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy your Toronto Mike debut?
I did.
Or are you gonna go beat up Bruce Arthur for telling you this would be a good time?
No, but primarily because I think Bruce could maybe take me. I'd have to get him in the knee first, but he's tall, so it's hard to do.
Bruce gets abused online.
He does.
I feel Bruce takes a lot of shots online, and I'm trying to think. Al Strachan, for example. There's a number of people out there who just have a target with Bruce's head on it. But he's a good guy.
He is a great guy.
Great
Big
guy.
man.
What were you doing at West End Phoenix that night I rolled by you?
We were talking about disinformation. West End Phoenix was hosting me in conversation with a young journalist.
What a time to be rolling by. Bruce Arthur, Supriya Dwivedi, and Dave Bedini all in the same space at the same time. That was amazing. All right, thanks for doing this. We got to take a photo now by Toronto Tree. And I bet you, any words for Stafford who's listening at home right now? He's for sure going to tune into Supriya Dwivedi's Toronto Mike debut.
Just, I want to know what Stafford thinks of the new Simpsons.
So do I, actually.
Yeah.
I'm going to get him over. You know what? Every 6 months I reach out and get him over here, talk Simpsons with him. And that, by the way, last question before I get to the extra. Thank you, Rob Pruce, for adding a lot of rosy and gray instrumental here. how do we follow you to find out what's next for you?
I'm on Twitter at Supriya Dwivedi. I'm on Blue Sky at Supriya, and on Instagram at Sups Dwivedi. But like, to be honest, something happens, you'll tweet about it. People can follow you.
Well, I don't tweet at all anymore.
Oh, so there you
Wilner got me to quit Twitter. Mike Wilner got me to quit Twitter. That's how influential he is. He said to me, Mike, if you loved going to a bar to drink your Great Lakes Brewery, and then that bar was bought by a Nazi, would you continue to go drink your beer at that bar?
Fine. Okay. Yeah.
So get off Twitter. Okay. And that brings us to the end of our 1,696th show. Go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs and to find out what happens next to FOTM Supriya Dwivedi. Rhymes of spaghetti. Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery, Palma Pasta, don't leave without your lasagna, Supriya. Moneris, Toronto Maple Leafs Baseball, RecycleMyElectronics.ca, Building Toronto Skyline, and Ridley Funeral Home. See you tomorrow when Lowest of the Low, specifically Ron Hawkins and Lawrence Nichols, return to the program. See you then.